All right. Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series, the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce series of virtual trainings in partnership with the Smithville Public Library. We are very excited to be continuing this virtual training series, which we hope has been a benefit so far and will continue to be one through the end of our series, which will end on August 31st. With us today to tell us and help us acknowledge our different funding partners is Smithville Public Library Director Judy Bergeron.
Thank you very much, April. And I'm very pleased to be a part of this series. The Smithville Public Library received funding from the Institute for Museum and Library Services and the Texas State Library and Archives Commission to be able to bring these programs to you. And I think they're very valuable as part of a CARES grant. And a lot of these virtual training programs are assisting businesses and organizations with ways to keep their businesses viable and active through the closures that we've experienced from the pandemic. And one of the very important things that we all need to learn, including those of us at the library and any public service offices, is customer service. And so I'm very happy to bring today's program to you, and I want to thank Linda for being a part of it.
Thank you very much, Judy. And I will not say much more other than to say that we have a great trainer here today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and get started with the program. Linda, take it away.
Thank you. I realized after I was reading the description in my bio, it had my photography background bio instead of my other, my former career bio, which was in corporate education, communication, conflict mediation. Actually, I wrote my dissertation on that. So I've had years and years of experience of writing and teaching all of these courses and have a couple of degrees in communication and conflict mediation. So just to get started, let me share my screen. Okay, so we're going to talk about communication. Hopefully this is going to work. There we go. So who, what, I don't know. We're going to start out. I always like to have fun in my classes, and being virtual is a little bit more difficult, but if anybody has any questions, comments, anything, feel free to put them in the chat and let me know. So classic in communication. So I'm going to show you a little video, and it takes it a second to load up here. There's videos. Anytime I teach, we always had some videos. So when you think of communication and you think of videos, there's several movie clips and things that come into play. This, of course, is the classic example of miscommunication and issues with communication. And for some reason, it starts at the end. Let me get it going. Okay.
Mr. Broadhurst, right. What are you doing? I love baseball. Well, we all love baseball. St. Louis, will you tell me the guys' names on the team so I go to see them in that St. Louis ballpark? I'll be able to know those fellas. Well, now, it's all right, folks. All right. Excuse me, I want to find out the fellas' names. As long as it's okay with the audience. I'm crazy about baseball. Will you stand still? Pick up your hat. Go pick up your hat. Okay. Now, look. Then you'll go and peddle your popcorn and don't interrupt the act anymore? Yes, sir. All right. But you know, strange may seem, they give ball players nowadays very peculiar names. Funny names? Nicknames, pet names. Not as funny as my name, Sebastian Dinwiddie. Oh, yes. Funnier than that? Oh, absolutely. Yes. Now, on the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third. That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team. I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third. Do you know the fellas' names? Yes. Well, then who's playing first? Yes. I mean the fellow's name on first base. Who? The fellow playing first base for St. Louis. Who? The guy on first base. Who is on first? Well, what are you asking me for? I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, who is on first? I'm asking you who's on first. That's the man's name. That's whose name? Yes. Well, go ahead and tell me. Who? The guy on first. Who? The first baseman. Who is on first? Have you got a first baseman on first? Certainly. Then who's playing first? Absolutely. When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money? Every dollar of it. Why not? The man's entitled to it. Who is? Yes. So who gets it? Why shouldn't he? Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it. Whose wife? Yes. After all, the man earns it. Who does? Absolutely. Well, all I'm trying to find out is what's the guy's name on first base?
No. What is on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Well, don't change the players.
I'm not changing nobody.
Take it easy.
What's the guy's name on first base?
What's the guy's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
He's on third. We're not talking about him.
How did I get on third base?
You mentioned his name.
If I mention a third baseman's name, who did I say is playing third?
No, who's playing first?
Stay off of first, will you?
Well, what do you want me to do?
Now, what's the guy's name on third base?
What's on second?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
He's on third.
There I go, back on third again.
Well, I can't change their names.
Will you please stay on third base, Mr. Broadhurst?
Now, what is it you want to know?
What is the fella's name on third base?
What is the fella's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
Third
base. You got an outfield?
Oh, sure.
St. Louis has got a good outfield?
Absolutely.
The left fielder's name?
Why?
I don't know. I just thought I'd ask you.
Well, I just thought I'd tell you.
Then tell me who's playing left field.
Who is playing first?
Stay out of the infield.
Don't mention their names out here.
I want to know what's the fella's name in left field.
What is on second?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who is on first?
I don't know. Third base.
Oh, take it easy. Take it easy, man.
And the left fielder's name?
Why?
Because.
Oh, he's center field. He's center. Will you pick up your hat, please? Pick up your hat and
Look.
stop this. Now, look, please.
Mr. Broadhurst.
Yes.
Wait a minute. You got a pitcher on the team?
Wouldn't this be a fine team without a pitcher?
I don't know. Tell me the pitcher's name.
Tomorrow.
You don't want to tell me the day?
I'm telling you, man.
Then go ahead.
Tomorrow.
What time?
What time what?
What time tomorrow you're going to tell me who's pitching?
Now, listen. Who is not pitching? Who is
I'll
on...
break your arm. You say who's on first?
Why come up here and ask?
I want to know what's the pitcher's name.
What's on second?
I don't know.
Third
Third
base.
base. You got a catcher?
Yes.
The catcher's name?
Today.
Today. And tomorrow's pitching.
Now you've got it.
That's all. St. Louis has got a couple of days on the team.
Well,
That's
I
all.
can't help that. All right. What do you want me to do?
Got a catcher?
Yes,
I'm a good catcher, too, you know.
I know that.
I would like to play for the St. Louis team.
Well, I might arrange that.
I would like to catch. Now, I'm being a good catcher. Tomorrow's pitching on the team, and I'm catching.
Yes.
Tomorrow throws the ball, and the guy up bunts the ball.
Yes.
Now, when he bunts the ball, me being a good catcher, I want to throw the guy out at first base, so I pick up the ball and throw it to who?
Now, that's the first thing you've said right.
I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's all you have to do.
Is to throw it to first base.
Yeah.
Now, who's got it?
Naturally.
Who has it?
Naturally.
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 Okay.
Now, you've got it.
I pick up the ball and I throw it to naturally.
I know, you don't. You throw the ball to first base.
Then who gets it?
Naturally.
Okay.
All right.
I throw the ball to naturally.
You don't. You throw it to who?
Naturally.
Well, that's it. Say it that way.
That's what I said.
You did not.
I said I throw the ball to naturally.
You don't. You throw it to who?
Naturally.
Yes.
So I throw the ball to first base and naturally gets it.
No, you throw the ball to first base.
Then who gets it?
Naturally.
That's what I'm saying.
You're not saying that.
Excuse me, folks.
All right, I'm sorry, friend.
I throw the ball to
You
naturally.
throw it to who?
Naturally.
Naturally. Well, say it that way.
That's what I'm
Don't
saying.
get excited now. Don't get
I
excited.
throw the ball to first base
Then who gets it?
he better get
That's
it.
it. All right, now don't get excited. Take it easy.
Now I throw the ball to first base. Whoever it is drops the ball, so the guy runs to second. Who picks up the ball and throws it to what? What throws it to? I don't know. I don't know. Throws it back to tomorrow. A triple play.
Yeah, it could be.
Another guy gets up and it's a long fly ball to because. Why? I don't know. He's on third, and I don't care.
What was that?
I said, I don't care.
Oh, that's a shortstop.
Okay, so that is the classic miscommunication video that everyone's familiar with from Abbott and Costello back in the 1950s. So we're going to dissect a little bit, and we're going to talk about some parts of communication. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of good communication that you're probably familiar with, but didn't put it in that context in a little bit. So parts of communication we're going to talk about, you have the sender, you have the channel, the receiver, and then of course the feedback. So we're going to talk about each of these. So there are quite a few barriers to communication, and this goes for both the sender and the receiver. And you can probably think of a lot of other ones too, but like physical barriers could be the environment, noise, technical problems. If you are, and I'm sure everybody's experienced this, you're having a Zoom call because we're in the age of Zoom, and it's not protected very well. This happened early on, and you get Zoom bombed. I've been on calls that have gotten Zoom bombed before. Okay, technical issues. If you're going to have a very serious conversation, do you want to go have it in a very noisy, crowded bar? No, you don't. With live music, you don't want to do that. So, and attitude barriers. So this is, I mean, you could just really not want to be talking at that time, but you're kind of forced to. Lack of motivation, behavior. So that all leads into it. You might not be respectable, polite, pleasant to even be around. All of those could be attitude barriers. Then we have emotional barriers. A little bit of the same. So it could just be an uneasy conversation. I know in the business world, I've had a lot of, I've given a lot of evaluations and I've received a lot of evaluations, and sometimes the tough ones just really aren't easy to do. Like if you're going to be firing someone or disciplining someone, sometimes those are really hard. So there's a lot of emotions involved in that. It affects your communication of it. Cultural barriers. This is a huge one. If you think about all the different cultures that we have, even locally, not even, you know, globally, but locally, we're very mixed in our cultures. The way that we talk to each other kind of goes along with language barriers. So you have to kind of know who you're talking to, what the language is. For a good example is Puerto Rico and Mexico and Spain and all these people, they all talk Spanish, but they talk a different Spanish. I had some friends from Puerto Rico, and they were telling me that if you say a word meaning a certain thing in Puerto Rico, and you said that exact same word to someone from Mexico or Mexican-American descent, it has two totally different meanings. One is really nice, pleasant. The other one is obscene. So you have to kind of know what, you know, dealing with the barriers. Gender barriers. You would think that this is dwindling, but there still is a lot of differences in the genders, different styles, different ways of communicating. You need to really watch this in the workplace because different people, and gender also could be kind of lumped in with age and generational barriers too. Different generations, different genders, they all perceive things differently. Lack of focus and eye contact. Has anyone ever been talking and the person they're talking to is like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm listening, and you're looking all around, everything else. Okay. Or you're talking to someone, but you're noticing something over their shoulder and, you know, you're just kind of making it look like you're talking. Fears of mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. That's part of being human. The biggest thing is just acknowledge your mistakes, learn from it, keep on going. Everybody does it. One of the biggest, if you think about emails, one of the biggest email mistakes that people have done is an email comes out with a whole list of people. This has happened. I've done it. Everybody's done it. You click, instead of replying back to the sender, you click reply all. And as soon as you hit send, you go, oh my God, my boss was on that and I just said something bad about him. So things of that nature too, and mistakes. Psychological barriers. These could be kind of like your paradigms, okay? Your emotions, your attitudes, things like that. Perception barriers. These are things that prevent someone from actually being able to analyze. You have a preconceived notion about that person and you already know how they're going to react. Well, they might not act that way, but in your mind, you've already got that issue. And so therefore, you've already made a judgment. And then feedback issues. There are people who just do not want to give feedback. They like to hear themselves talk, and they're just going to talk all the time and just bowl right over and not let the other person have a chance to give some feedback. And we're going to talk more about feedback in a little bit. Other barriers, distractions. Okay, think about the biggest one now. We talked about Zoom. I'm guilty. Everybody I'm sure is guilty. You're in a Zoom webinar or Zoom meeting or something, and yeah, you're listening, everything's cool, but you have it minimized and you're checking your email or you're checking your social media or playing a game on your phone or something like that. Everybody's guilty of it. This is actually becoming quite more and more prevalent. Is your head is down, you're walking, you're texting on your phone, and you run into a pole or you trip over a curb. They're actually saying there are more upper neck issues now because people constantly looking down instead of looking up. They're constantly looking down at their phones. Let's talk about channels of communication. And what I mean by channel is the means that you communicate. How are you communicating? You have to know to your audience. For example, perfect example is, I just found out my 89-year-old mother just got a smartphone. It's very scary, but yes, just got a smartphone. Her old flip phone finally died, and they don't make them anymore. Well, okay, she has this phone. She basically knows how to make a call, and that's probably it. She's had a tablet, hadn't been able to figure out how to do anything else on it besides play solitaire. So would it be smart for me to communicate with her by sending her a text message? No, because she wouldn't know how to do it. A lot of times when, for example, my sister was just there from Illinois. I was receiving texts from my sister because my mom was saying, text Linda and ask her this. Let her know this happened, do this. So that's how she communicates. Have somebody else text. Chat, email. Perfect example of some of this stuff is email. I email my coaches because I'm a sports photographer. I email my coaches all the time. Several times I've had, I have one this year that's really big in it, is I had a coach last year who never checked their email. They text message every time, or they would chat through Facebook, but they never emailed anything. If I wanted a roster, I would get it through a text, and then I would have to forward it to me and format it and put it the way I want. A good one here is, the old mobile phone. I mean, not mobile phone, landline phone. Very few people actually have landline phones nowadays. My mother actually has an old rotary phone that she keeps in the garage, just because a lot of the great grandkids have never seen one before and have no idea what it is. And that's just going to become more and more prevalent. That's just the world we live in. So you need to know how you're able to connect. There was a story that came out about a year or so ago of a teacher who predominantly was in a Hispanic school locally, and he was having trouble communicating with his kids because his kids, a lot of them were English as second language. Well, he found out through Google, a translate program. He wrote and taught everything through this program. He said the kids' grades went up, they were more interactive because they could understand what he was saying. So you have to figure out how you're going to effectively communicate. Feedback. Okay, feedback is essential because you want to make sure that the person that's receiving the message understands what you intended for it to say, and whether they agree or disagree. There are a lot of other stages with feedback that go along with the conflict mediation side of that deal with what aspect, how you communicate back, what is perceived by it, things like that. But for this class, we're just going to talk about the basic feedback. You want to be able to know, yes, I heard you, I agree with you, and I understand what you said. So this is very interesting. So we spend about 70% of our time communicating, just over any means possible. 45% is listening, 9% is writing, 16% is reading. Sorry, Judy. Speaking is 30%. But what do we learn in school? Writing and reading. unless you go to college, or now I think they have debate and stuff like that in high schools, you really don't take any type of speech class or anything like that. Listening, I've never had a listening class until I got higher ed, master's and doctorate. I had some listening classes, or actually it wasn't even a whole class. It was chapters that we talked about that dealt with this. So it's just something to think about. So when you're trying to improve your listening skills, you want to concentrate on the speaker. You want to be in the moment, listening to what they're saying. Now, there is a difference. It's kind of sometimes a joke through our house. There is a difference between listening and hearing. Do you hear what I say? Yeah, I heard you. But are you listening? That's a big difference. Listening means, yeah, I heard you and I understand. So kind of start thinking about how you respond. It's like, yeah, I heard you. Okay, but did you understand? When you listen, you want to notice the keywords, general themes or points. Avoid distractions. There again, being in the right setting that you can have a conversation that you need to. And then this is a big one. This will help reduce fights and everything. This is all of this information. It's pretty much a lot of common sense, but it's also good information to use in a business and your personal life. So pause before speaking. This is probably my hardest thing to do because I want to talk it out. I want to get to the bottom right now. I don't want to go off and think about it and figure this out. I have a tendency to just say the first thing that's on my mind, whether it is right or not. So that actually could be a huge thing to do. So when you're giving feedback, you have to check for understanding. Okay, this is what I think you said. Yes, I got it. I understand everything. I can tell you what I learned. I can repeat it back. Or I kind of got it. Maybe I have a few more questions. Or I have no clue what you're talking about. Sorry, I wasn't even paying attention. My mind wandered. I've gotten to where I say that every once in a while because people appreciate the truth. You can BS and say, oh yeah, I understood. This is what you said, even though you really didn't. You kind of hear it a little bit and then fill in the blanks. So things to think about is when you want to check for understanding is if somebody asks you to do something and your first answer is no, why did you immediately say no? Was there a reason? Did somebody ask you to do something and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that? Well, why? How did they ask you? Were they serious? Were they just joking around with you? Excuse me. Very important. When someone asks you to do something, what do they ask and why? When you don't understand what somebody has said, write it down. Everybody learns different. Some people are visual learners. Some people are active learners. I have to have lists. If I go to the grocery store, I have to have an exact list, what size can, and sometimes even pictures of what we're missing. Or now I love the HEB app. You can go in and you can put exactly what you need. And it's a successful trip if I only have to call home and ask about a question about something maybe once. That's a very successful trip because it's always at least once, sometimes more, that I have to go, okay, where is this? I can't find it. Or here's what they have. Is this what you need? So my grocery lists are extremely long because there's lots of details. You also want to check when it's when you want somebody to feel good or let them know that you care. Yeah, I heard what you're saying. I understand that can be really, really difficult thing to do when your mom says this or, when your sister does this. I know what you mean. And it makes them feel good. It involves them. It gets the conversation going. Same thing. When you want to help someone by listening, when you're asked to solve a problem, you got to make sure you know what you're understanding. There are a lot of places where when you're communicating through email, you don't have emotions. You can't see people. Through Zoom, okay, there are 4 people on the call live right now, but I don't see their faces. I see April's still face, but I don't see anybody else. So are they Are y'all comprehending or what's going on? See, so things like that. Another thing is nowadays, everybody has a face mask. So you don't see this, everything is muffled. So you have to communicate that way. You just see their eyes. I always like to say I've had a lot of training in this because I used to work in a high-tech industry in their clean room. So all you saw was just the eyes. You saw nothing else. Sometimes you get questions and information given over the phone. You have to figure out what you're doing. The perfect example and a good video, I'm not going to show you, but a good video of this is think about the movie Apollo 13. They're up in space. They have an issue. They have to build this filter. The people at command center have to give step-by-step instructions how to build this filter in order for them to survive. So that's a matter of life and death, and you have to make sure you're understood. So that's a perfect example of if you ever get a chance, go back and watch it, because after you start watching these movies and picking this stuff out, you can't not see it. You also want to be specific. Use the correct terms. There are people, I've talked to people I used to work with all kinds when I taught corporate classes, from the cleaning to the individual workers, to the executives, to the engineers. Everybody has different terms. Sometimes they mean the same thing, sometimes they don't. Have you ever talked to someone who is spouting off all this information and this technical jargon? It could be a doctor, it could be somebody like that, and you're like, I have no idea what any of this means. When I used to care for my dad before he passed away, I would always take my phone and record the doctor's messages, because 9 times out of 10, I would have to go back and look up stuff that they said, even though I asked questions. Fit the listener's level of understanding and interest. Okay. Would an engineer go and talk about electrical engineering, high-tech stuff to somebody in the 3rd grade? No, it's not their level of interest. We used to do engineering in schools. We would have engineering week in schools, and we would go, and I was involved in that. And you do science projects and stuff like that. And it was really interesting to watch some of these engineers struggle to get down to the elementary level, to be able to talk to them on the elementary level, which is why they had trainers go along and help. You want to say only what's important. Don't use all the excess baggage. Okay. I get accused of this at home because yesterday's perfect example. What time will you be home from your photo shoot? Okay, well, let's see. I have to go by here first, and then my shoot starts at 4. I've got 15 kids. It will probably take about an hour. I should be home. And they're like, I don't care. I just want to know what time you're going to be home. So, take off all the excess baggage. Being understood by the listener. Being free from confusion. Okay, you got to make sure you're on the same page in order to have effective conversation. You can have conversation, but to have effective conversation, and there's a difference. You need to make sure you're on the same page and everybody is understanding everything. So this is really kind of a cool chart that I have. It's the 7 C's of communication. Clear, make your objective clear. Avoid complex words and phrases. Concise, keep it clear and to the point. Don't just fill up the time. Concrete, be specific. Use facts and figures if it is meaningful to do so. Make sure your information is correct. Try to avoid typos. I'm one of those, I find typos, even though I send typos every once in a while. I'll call and go, okay, that date is not right, or what's going on with this? Make sure it's coherent. Does it even make sense? Does it flow? Is it complete? Does it contain everything that it needs to? And courteous. Are you polite, or are you just, here's a message, boom. I've done this before where I have something. I had an old boss that I would go into work at 4 in the morning. My boss would get there at 8. there's a lot that happens between 4 and 8. I've already dealt with the night cruise. I've already talked to everything else. I have a list of questions. I have a list of issues. He made it his policy that I could not go talk to him until 9 because he had to have time to get oriented and get familiar and get ready for the day. Sorry about that. So now I want to actually open it up to questions and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, Judy, I'm going back and reading, sorry. Judy says, sometimes I'm afraid if I pause, I'll forget what I'm going to say. That is so true. When you are talking or when you're listening, we actually can hear so fast that we've already got our next thing to say. And we're like, okay, I'm waiting for him to breathe and then I'm going to jump in. So that actually happens a lot. You can actually hear a lot faster than you speak. Okay, there again, I actually saw my UPS guy come. So sorry, I was distracted for a moment. Yes, Krista, the masks do force us to slow down and look at each other. I've had people, well, people pretty much know me, especially if I'm on a job or something, because I don't have any in here with me, but I have my logo on my mask, so they know who I am. But, you know, you think about all these different masks and everything that's out there. It's really hard to tell. There are some people that wear the gaiters that all you see is just the beads of their eyes and some that don't. Does anybody have any other questions? I actually have my information. Yes, I will be sharing the slides. April interrupts. Okay, that's good. I shared my information here. If anybody has any questions or needs information, or has a group in their office that goes, you know, you go, God, I really would like to hear a class, bring in somebody and do a class on this. Give me a call. I do this all the time. I actually wrote a combined conflict mediation and communication class for my dissertation, and I presented it to several different groups because that was actually the topic of my dissertation. Was communication and conflict mediation in the workplace. So any tips on interrupting? The biggest one, and I have this too, the biggest one is slowing down. Think before you speak. When I start doing this, I save a lot of fights and a lot of issues because you really have to slow down and think about how to respond. And I'm notorious because I'll say something and the other person doesn't respond. I'm like, how come you don't say anything? The classic example I love to give is I had a grandmother who lived to be 94, loved her to death. She died when I was fairly young, but I was college. So now when she lived with us for years, because my mom was her only daughter, so lived with us for years, put her in a nursing home when mom couldn't take care of her anymore. So we were there one day and we were talking and everything else, and she wasn't responding. So I said, well, Grandma, are you hearing? Did you hear us? Yeah. Well, you haven't said anything. She goes, don't have nothing to say. I'm good. And it's like, yep. Okay. So if you don't have anything to say, people are so scared of silence. Silence is not a bad thing. So any tips on not waiting to speak? Just wait, okay? Small talk. So I actually struggle with this too. Small talk usually for me, and I get accused of this a lot, is everything you talk about is work. Talk about, personal stuff. Talk about other stuff. Talk about, and the best thing to do is find something about the person, bring up, a couple of questions or something, find out something, start talking about the other person. People love to talk about themselves. Very well-known fact. If you can find some little tidbit with them, something in common, start talking about them. I have met and come up with so many, I've actually led to some jobs and stuff, just having a conversation with somebody that is doing something and, you know, started talking about it and they're like, God, I really wish I knew somebody that could make t-shirts, or I really wish I knew somebody that could, you know, engrave this for me or take these pictures. And it's like, oh, well, I could do that. What are you looking for? And, you know, it's just great. So finding something in common, finding something like that. A good way to get over that, Krista, is going to a lot of these, going to chamber mixers and things like that. We'll kind of, a lot of times we'll kind of force you to do the small talk, go into conferences. We'll start, you know, having small talk, start about, you know, asking about, oh, well, you know, where do you live? Or like if it's a conference, where do you work from or where are you from? Things like that. I am the worst one to ask about remembering names. When I used to teach new hires, I would do an onboarding process with them for a month. We had them 4 days a week for 4 weeks. And I would tell them the end of the first day, okay, I got your names. I figured out who you are, but tomorrow you're going to come in. You're going to have different clothes on. You might even change your hairstyle. I will have no clue who you are. So we get to start all over again. It's kind of like somebody with Alzheimer's. It's a new day every day. So it's just finding something that connects. What is something in common? Does that person remind you of somebody else? Do one of those little rhyming things or something. I've tried them all. I'm just really bad with names. I deal with, one of the schools I deal with on photography level is Del Valle. And I've dealt with the high school and the 3 junior highs for going on like 5 or 6 years. And some of the coaches are the same. And some of the coaches I photograph multiple times a year. And I forget their name almost every time. So what I do is in my files, the very first time I shoot them, which is usually in the fall, I photograph them rather in the fall, I have their picture and I make one sheet that has all the coaches and has their name. Now, this past year, it was really cool because all of the open houses were virtual. So all the teachers and coaches and stuff did a little online thing in remembering. So I actually went and watched all these and did a screen capture. So I had their picture with their name. I've had athletes or people that walk through the halls and they'll start talking to me. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea who you are because your hair is all fancy and you're in regular clothes. You're not in your basketball uniform with your hair back. And, I mean, it's just, it's hard. It is really hard. Especially, you know, the young girls and younger than me, they change their hairstyle, they change their hair color, you know? So yeah, some kids stick out and a lot of them don't. So any other questions that I have? It's 12:40, April, I'm not sure when. If you have anything else or how far you want to go.
You have 10 minutes left.
I have 10 minutes left. Okay, so, okay, well, let me talk about, and I tried to find it and I could not. So another fantastic communication. Okay, so we started out with bad communication video. And then I talked about the Apollo 13 video where you have to have really good communication when you're not looking at each other. A very good example of perfect communication and waiting to talk, acknowledging the person is Dances with Wolves. In Dances with Wolves, they're all sitting around, all the tribe is sitting, the men rather, or they're sitting around the fire, and the head of the council starts talking and saying all these reasons. They're trying to figure out if they want the white man in their group or not. And they're having all this huge discussion. And then one of the guys, you know, everybody goes, you know, they're agreeing. Okay. So then one of the guys gets up and he says, yes, I see you have very good points, but let me do this. I mean, it's just perfect example of how you should communicate. So when you're giving feedback and you're doing all that, you always want to acknowledge them. I mean, this is something I get deeper into in the conflict class, but you always want to acknowledge, okay, yeah, I heard what you said. I understand. So good example. April, yeah, I heard what you said. I have 10 minutes left. Okay, that's great. But I really have a lot more to talk about. Can we go 15 minutes? So that actually, when you're discussing and giving feedback, you always want to, kind of end with a question. Because when you end with a question, that forces them to talk more. I really don't have more to say, but that was just the example, April. But so it's kind of that open and closed communication thing. That's really huge in conflict mediation because, you're saying something, and if you just state a fact, the other person's going to go, yeah, okay. And that's it. But if you ask a question, they're going to have to answer. Now, their answer could be, well, I'm not really sure how to think about it. I need to ponder on that for a while. Or my favorite one is I need to marinate on that. I heard that in a movie and I love it. As you can tell, I watch a lot of movies. But you always want to have that open conversation. When I was actually in class getting my conflict mediation certification, we had to do mock mediations. We had a guy that would come in, and he actually, because you have to make sure when you're a mediator, you have to make sure you ask the same number of questions and open-ended questions. And he would actually sit there and you're right on, you're doing great, everything is an open-ended question. And he would go, oh, so you had this many closed-ended questions, this many open-ended questions, this many questions to this person, this many questions to that person. And you're like, wow, you don't think about it when you're in the moment until you start getting something. It's kind of like you don't realize how you sound or look on a video until you record yourself and then look and you go, oh my God, what was my problem? Same thing. So I really, really hope that this information was really good. Y'all got something out of it. Like I said, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to give me a call. That's actually my cell phone number. It's out there everywhere. So everybody calls my cell phone because I'm one of those that don't have a landline. So I've had cell phones since the original ones that you had to go sit out in your car and talk on. So April, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can have it back. April, there you are.
I'm coming. Sorry, a little technology thing. So thank you very much, Linda, for that wonderful class. I really appreciate it. I'm always looking for better ways to communicate. And as I said, one of my problems is I have a bad tendency of interrupting people, which I think is unfortunately because I'm busy thinking about what I'm going to say rather than listening to them speak, which is a bad habit of mine. For those of you that are on the class today, thank you for being here. And I'll remind you that we have several other classes coming up all the way through August 31st. Our next classes that we'll be offering is March 16th, Canva at 12 p.m. March 23rd, actually Canva 2 it's a second in a 3-part series. March 23rd, Canva 3 will be at 6 p.m. So we're going to mix it up and have an evening class. And March 31st, Photography 101. So we have several classes coming up. Those are the ones that are through the end of March. The question we just had from Tracy is, what is Canva? Canva is an online, is a software that allows you to build really cool marketing materials like posters, postcards, Facebook headers, things like that. So it's pretty cool. And we have an instructor that is going to teach you how to use that product. There is a free online product. So if you want to take the class, I recommend you download it and kind of familiarize yourself with it just a bit before the class. And again, all those classes are free, very easy to sign up. Go to smithvilletx.org, click on events at the top of the page and go to virtual classes and see all the mini classes that we're offering and register for any of them that you like. Okay. Thank you all for being here today. And that concludes our class. Thank you, Linda. Bye-bye, everybody.